Hey there, planners. Today I'm going to be setting up goals for the month of April, but I'm also going to be doing a quarterly refresh of my goals. Stepping back, taking a look at the big picture and the annual goals and seeing what needs to be updated and refreshed as I head into the second quarter of the year. This is great if you use the Powersheets goal planner and would like some help as you walk through it, or if you just want some techniques to use for refreshing your own goals for the next quarter. So go grab your planners and let's get planning. One of the things I really love about the Powersheets Goal Planner is that you take the larger annual goals, and there's a great process to help you set that up, but then you break it down into bite-sized chunks, and the quarterly refresh is a great example of this. So the quarterly refresh is where you are purposely pausing to look back at the goals that you set at the beginning of the year, look at the progress that you're making, really evaluate what is keeping you from being fully successful, or what roadblocks are in place, and then also how you need to check and adjust your goals going forward. So I really appreciate the way there are annual, quarterly, and monthly, even down to daily segments of goal planning in the Powersheets Goal Planner. So I've got my Powersheets book. I've got all my markers, my washi tape. I've got my 2021 annual goals that I set at the beginning of the year so I can reference those. And I'm going to dive right in, and hopefully you will join me. Grab your goal planner or your list of 2021 goals, and let's kind of look at where we are and evaluate what we need to do for the next quarter coming up. All right, the first step in the quarterly refresh is just to do another round of the life evaluation and check-in. And so this is an activity that you do at the very beginning of the book to kind of evaluate these areas of your life: health, spouse and focal relationships, friends, family, finances, work, spiritual and personal growth, and recreation. You assign it a number and make some notes. And this is just a check-in to really measure, are you making progress? Are there any things that are popping up that have changed to the way that you evaluate this? Are the goals and the steps that you're taking making a difference? So I'm going to take a minute and go through this, and I'll be back when I'm done to talk about kind of what is standing out to me and how this might impact my goals going forward. All right, so I completed the evaluation check-in, and what I did is I just listed over here in the column on the left-hand side what the Q1 at the beginning of the year, what did I score these areas, and then rescored them and took some notes, and then also indicated whether they went up, stayed the same, went down, or went way up. So as far as health goes, I did improve in this area. I was really focused on establishing healthy habits, creating kind of a menu of ways to improve health, both physically, mentally, and emotionally, and I have done that. Where I want to focus in the next quarter is really listening to my body and identifying those stress triggers that can have impacts in all of those areas: physical, emotional, and mental. And so that's going to be a focus for me as I move into the second quarter. From a spouse and focal relationship standpoint, I did make improvements here. I was focused on really paying attention, supporting each other, spending quality time. I still think we have opportunities to do more of that, but we have been able to do some of that in fun ways, even despite being locked in the house quite a bit because of the pandemic. But we're doing well on that. I just want to continue what is going on here. From a friend's standpoint, it stayed the same. There's been a lot of challenges from a workload standpoint and a COVID standpoint, not being able to travel and see friends, but I can still continue what I have started in the first quarter, which is focusing on maintaining those relationships in creative ways. For family, I did make some progress here. Quality time was a goal, and sometimes that's hard to do when you're locked in the house with everybody to get that one-on-one quality time, but I was able to do that with my daughters each individually, and also staying connected, by phone calls and other means with external family, with that extended family. One of the things that has starred here, and I almost forgot to put it on here, but we are taking a trip to Italy as a family this year, and I've really got to get focused on all of the detailed planning that needs to go on with that. From a finances standpoint, I think I made a lot of progress in this area. So really focusing on the long-term planning and short-term goals, definitely have made some gains here, and I did complete a no spend challenge, and so really that what I'm planning to do here for the next quarter is just to stay on track and keep going with the progress that I've made. From a work standpoint, it stayed the same. I have some changes that are going to be happening for me at work in the second quarter, and I've got a very specific, very targeted goal that I really need to get very organized on to accomplish. And I need to be asking the right questions to prepare for the future. So those are going to be some focus areas coming up in the second quarter. From a spiritual growth standpoint, things stayed the same. I have found some new ways to really study God's Word, and my prayer life I do feel like is growing. I'm seeing God's promises come to fruition in my life through that prayer life, so that is good. What I would like to do is find a longer term study, like a 2 or 3 month study to get into in the second quarter. I find that that's very motivating for me versus, a 7-day or a 30-day study. So that's what I'm going to be looking for in the second quarter of the year. And then last of all, recreation, which I use this section to capture everything about this channel. Really good progress here. I did make some improvements in the score, and my focus is going to be just to continue to grow my own skills so that I can deliver value to the folks, you guys who watch this channel. And that's really what it's all about for me, is connecting and building that community of those of us who just love planners. And I want to deliver the highest quality information to my community. So that's going to be my focus here. So I love this exercise. It helps ground me in how I want to transition to the second quarter of the year and where some of my focus areas are going to be tied back to my annual goals. This next sheet, there's a really great try this at home exercise here. It's all about how you spend your time. There are 168 hours in a week, and if you want to really look at how you're spending your time, there's some ideas here for how to do that from a time tracking standpoint. So that is optional, and you can certainly do that if you would like. I am going to focus on this section, which is all about what I'm saying yes to this quarter and what I'm saying no to. All right, so I kept these lists pretty short. So for the second quarter of the year, I'm saying yes to fun outside because it's finally starting to warm up and feel like spring out there. So I definitely want to get outside with my new puppy and my family and enjoy the outside. I'm also saying yes to training my puppy to be a good dog. And that is going well so far, but there's still some work to do there. Getting things done light, GDT light. So I in the first quarter of the year, I read the Getting Things Done book for the first time. I don't know why it took me so long to read that. I love it. It is a bit of an overwhelming system, so I'm not committing to fully implementing, but I am committing to pulling the parts and pieces in that make sense for me. And you will see that across all of my planning systems. You've already started to see that in some of my videos, but really pulling in the parts and pieces that make sense across all my planning systems, work and personal. Permission to relax. This is really important. And, I feel like I do have to give myself permission to relax. And so I'm saying yes to that. I'm also saying yes to learning new things, because when I look at, where I want to focus based on the evaluation check-in, there's going to be some new things I have to learn, both professionally and personally. And so I'm saying yes to that. What I'm saying no to is emotional roller coasters. There have been, a lot of opportunities for that, globally, nationally, and then, more personally in my life. And I'm just saying no to those. I'm not interested in being on any more emotional roller coasters. It's been, there's a lot of opportunity for that type of reaction and response over the last, now 18 months, so over a year now. So I'm done with that. I'm saying no to ignoring the signs of stress, because I think that's really important. It ties back to healthy habits, emotional, physical, and mental. And so paying attention to those signs of stress and making sure I'm taking the right proactive steps are important. I'm saying no to any additional commitments that don't align with my goals, and I think that's going to be important in the next quarter. in many different areas. So I'm definitely going to be paying attention to that. And I'm saying no to being stuck in the old way of doing things. Really focused on tying it back to learning new things. So that's what I'm saying yes and no to this quarter. So this next section is about keep moving forward, and it's really asking questions about what goal you feel stuck on, that you're not really making the progress that you need to make, and what's holding you back, what would have to change to move forward, and what happens if you move forward, what happens if you don't. When I look at my annual goals, I don't feel like I'm really stuck on any of them. I feel like I'm making really good progress on all of them, and my evaluation confirms that. My goal progress confirms that. I think if I was going to pick any of them, I would probably change it to the question of which one am I concerned about, and there's a couple. Around the family, part of what I'm including in celebrating my family being present and preparing for what's ahead is to help my oldest daughter prepare for college. She's 17, so we're really at that point where we need to be planning college trips and visits. That's been difficult just because of the pandemic and the limitations of visiting colleges, and so I do feel a little stuck there. I also think there is a large trip that we're taking as a family with some extended family members later this year that we've had to move a couple times because of the pandemic, and that I feel like I haven't made good progress on because we have to keep kicking it out. I haven't made good progress on planning for. So I don't know that I really feel stuck in any area, but I do have some areas that I'm going to focus on. So I'm just going to make note of those here in this space, but I don't really feel like I need to go through this exercise because I do know exactly what it needs to happen. So I'm just going to make note of those two here and then move on to my refreshed goals. All right, so this is such a good exercise to refresh the goals. I took the annual goals and I haven't changed them, but I focused in for the second quarter on what I really want to accomplish here from a spiritual standpoint, from a long-term financial goals and long-term security, from improving health, physical, emotional, mental health, celebrating my family, being present in the moment, preparing for what's ahead, and then also the Planning Annie channel. So I've got some specific things identified here that I really want to go after that tie right back into, the annual goals. And so this is really going to help me prepare for the next set of pages, which is those mini goals. These are mini goals tied back to this quarter for the overall progress this year. And there's a space for all of the goals that you have set this year to do that. And I'm going to work through kind of mapping out, based on what I want to accomplish this quarter, what are the actual mini goals. And you've got a place to write the goal and then also to list out the action steps. And this is really to help you be able to pull from here for the next 3 months as you're setting up your monthly power sheets. All right, so based on my refreshed goals and really what I want to focus on in this quarter, I have been able to break out each of the goals and identify the mini goal for this quarter, and then kind of map out a few draft steps for how I'm going to go after that. So I have 5 goals, and I've got this mapped out for each one of them. This is such a fantastic way to really get into exactly how you're going to lay out the goals for this quarter. So I'll just pick one and use it as an example. So I'll use health as the example. My overall yearly goal is to improve physical, emotional, and mental health through focused self-care habits. The mini goal for this quarter is to learn about stress triggers, monitor for this and track when they show up for me, and then implement proactive measures using my healthy habits menu, which I created in the first quarter of the year. Stress for me, it's not that I'm an extremely stressed person, but as I get older, I do recognize, and I hear this from my physicians, stress is it has the ability to have a major impact on overall health. You hear about a lot of folks, in their middle years having heart attacks, and stress is cumulative over time, and so it's just something I want to make sure I'm paying as much attention to as, physical health. And so I do have, a job that can be stressful at times. There have certainly been stressors and sources of stress in our world in the last year or so. So I don't want to lose sight of this. And so I want to focus on this quarter and just evaluate how is stress impacting me? Because nobody is immune to stress and its impacts. The action steps are, first of all, to find information sources on stress triggers to really research this. The second step is to develop a tracking system in my journal so that once I know about stress triggers and how they show up, that I'm actually tracking how often they show up, to implement a system for taking those proactive steps based on the work that I did in the first quarter to really come up with that physical, mental, and emotional healthy menu, like a buffet, to pull from, to start to implement those, and then establish additional goals as needed, because I think tracking and monitoring this for me is really going to identify if there are other things I need to do. I have a annual physical in the third quarter of the year, and so I will probably use this information to talk more with my physician about anything I notice, if there's anything that needs to be addressed. So that's kind of the layout of how you break each of your goals down into what you really want to focus on this quarter. So you're going to see that my goals for April, May, and June are coming from these mini goals, and that's how I'm going to be kind of zeroing in on what I want to focus on for the next quarter. All right, so now that I've done all that prep work to refresh my goals for the second quarter of the year, it is time to get started on my actual tending list for the month of April. So I'm going to start with encouraging words. All right, so my encouraging words for the month of April come from 2 Corinthians 1:20. For all the promises of God find their yes in Him. That is why it is through Him that we utter our amen to God for His glory. And my priority for this month is seeing commitments fulfilled. So it really ties together the encouraging word, the focus that I'm going to have in the second quarter, and really shifting from the foundational groundwork of my goals that I did in the first quarter, which was the first quarter was really focused on starting small, taking those steps to get up and running this year. And the second quarter is really going to be about executing on those commitments and starting to see those things occur, see some of the fulfilling of those commitments and goals. And so that's what I'm going to be focused on. For monthly actions, I've got my place marked where I came up with my mini goals. And so I'm just going to start putting some of those in place. So for the first mini goal around my spiritual goal, I am going to be finding a study guide around the promises of God and scheduling time for execution of that study guide. All right, for the next goal around long-term financial plans, I am going to be looking at establishing a household financial records management system. And so I need to really research options and purchase supplies for that system this month. For my physical, emotional, and mental health goal, the mini goal for this quarter is to learn about those stress triggers, monitor and track as they show up, and then implement those proactive measures. I am going to focus on researching and learning about the sources of stress triggers and developing a tracking system in my journal for those triggers. For my goal around preparing for what's ahead, being in the moment, and really enjoying time with my family, I have got to get specific and tactical about our trip to Italy that's coming up later this year. So I'm actually going to be setting up a project plan in my planning system and mapping out all the steps and actions that lead us up to the date of departure. And then the quarterly goal for Planning Annie and the growth of this channel and this community is really to get specific around developing and executing a value chain for you, my subscribers. Value chains are something I am going to be pulling out of that my MBA that I earned. I'm going to be dusting off some of that material and getting back into that. And it's just a great system to be able to quantify and verbalize, how value is brought to you, my subscribers, through this channel. And so I want to just get get tactical around that. So what I'm going to be doing this month is really dusting off some of that information, re-educating myself from my MBA textbooks around the value chain system, and identifying what is the value with community input. So I will be seeking input from you all on this goal. All right, so here is the finished tending list for April. I've got my encouraging words, my priority, which is really seeing commitments fulfilled. I'm going to be diving into the goals that I've set for this year and the refresh that I did for the quarter. I've got the monthly goals, a couple of weekly action items, and a couple of daily action items. The daily action items are actually really focused on health, which is just getting outside, walking the puppy, start tracking stress, and those are easy things to do daily. Because my monthly actions are so big, I tried to keep weekly and daily pretty light this time. I am going to be batch recording Planning Annie content because that is really working for me and it's freeing up my schedule. And then also starting the Promises of God study at least one time a week to begin with, just to get me into it. But I probably will not start that until probably midway or later in the month because I do have to do some research on that. And I would love to hear any ideas that you have on any of these goals. So when it comes to a Bible study on the Promises of God, I'd love to hear a recommendation if anybody has those. Options for household financial records management systems. That is something I've got to tackle in my house. And so I'm wide open to suggestions of what has worked for you. Really getting your arms around stress triggers, tracking that, understanding how stress impacts you and how you track that. If you have ideas there, I'd love to hear that. Planning a trip. I've got a bunch of resources that I've collected, but if you've got a resource that you absolutely love that has helped you plan a big trip, I'd love to hear that from you. And just any other comments or questions about the process and what you've seen today, please leave those all in the comments down below, and I would love to have some further discussion. If you enjoyed the video and you got value out of it, give me a thumbs up and let me know. Subscribe to Planning Annie for more content like this, and as always, thanks for planning with me.